Go ahead.
Okay, our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. Helping Parents Heal goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. Helping Parents Heal affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at all meetings is voluntary. All discussions that take place at affiliate-led meetings are confidential. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Zoom meetings run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of Helping Parents Heal meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with our children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Julie. We're so glad you're here. I'm so excited to hear this presentation again. It's fabulous.
We are thrilled that Julie is here, and it's going to be a wonderful evening. I'm going to quickly introduce Julie just a little bit, just in case you weren't at the conference. And she's one of our biggest supporters. We are so grateful that she's a part of Helping Parents Heal. Psychic and medical intuitive Julie Ryan can sense what medical conditions and illnesses a person has and facilitate energetic healings. She can communicate with spirits, both alive and dead. Julie can scan animals, access people's past lives, and remove ghosts from homes and other buildings. And she can tell how close to death someone is. Her book, Angelic Attendants, What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next, describes a series of events that involves angels, multitudes of deceased family and friends, the spirits of deceased pets, and countless serendipitous and miraculous moments. Julie's children's books, Angel Messages for Kids and Angel Messages for Dogs, are picture books that have angels answering kids' most difficult questions. Each week, Julie scans callers on her Ask Julie Ryan podcast, which is heard by millions in over 100 countries throughout the world. Julie is a businesswoman, an inventor, an author, a podcaster, and a serial entrepreneur. Her surgical device inventions are sold globally, and she has founded 9 companies in 5 different industries. Julie's psychic and medical intuitive skills are learned. And she has a Facebook address as well as lots of other addresses that are available. First of all, before I pass it over to Julie, she wants you to know that she will send you a PDF file of her books free of charge if you would like to. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming the beautiful Julie Ryan. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, you sweet girls. Thanks for having me. What a treat to be with all of you. I think I messed up my screen because it looks like I've been coloring with red crayon. Can you fix that? One of you?
I think it can only be fixed on your end, but
how do I fix that? Because that's going to make me nuts. Is there an eraser here?
There might be an eraser. You know, it's so funny.
Yeah, here's an eraser. Okay, let me erase. Hi, everybody. While I'm erasing this, you know, you can teach old dogs new tricks. And I tell you, I've learned all this techno stuff. I impressed myself. Oh my goodness, with all this technological stuff. It's crazy. But good evening, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. And as Elizabeth mentioned, yes, I am happy to send you a free digital or audiobook download of my books. And we need to update that bio because I have angel messages for kids, dogs, and cats, and angel messages for truth is coming out at Christmas time. So
Oh,
we've got
that's important.
two more
Sorry,
books. to add to that.
we'll update that for
We'll
next
update
time,
it.
but and
So
this time as well. Thank you.
that's right. So if you want a free copy of my books, just go to askjulieryan.com/askjulie. Just go to askjulieryan.com, go to the Ask Julie button and just say, hey, I heard you on Helping Parents Heal. I'd love a copy of your books and we'll send you a free download as a gift for being with us this evening. So this is the presentation that I gave at the conference, which, oh my goodness, for those of you that weren't able to go, what an experience. I've been to many conferences in my career, nothing like that one. That one takes the cake, hands down, no contest. The vibe, the love, the joy, everybody was lovely. Everybody had an amazing time. It was heartfelt. It was just such an honor and a joy to be there. So thank you for having me. And Elizabeth and Irene asked me to do this presentation for all of you. And this is the one that I gave at the conference. So here we go. The topic is nobody dies alone. And I think we worry so much about when our loved one does pass and they're by themselves. We worry about that. And if we couldn't be there for whatever reason, certainly some of us had elderly parents or grandparents that passed during COVID. And it's just, I find that it's brought so much extra stress and regret and grief to people that I want you to know that nobody dies alone. We're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones. So, all right, let's see if I can make this switch here. This slide, which we did a minute ago, right? We were able to make it go. Yeah, here I am bragging about my technical abilities.
I think you should be able to just
I'm clicking it. It's not happening. So
and
I'm
it's
not quite sure
gosh,
what's going on with that. Let me try it manually. No, it's not even clicking manually.
well, that's interesting. Okay. It did click earlier. We
It
saw
did. I know. Yeah.
Okay. I know that the kids are going
There we go. I don't know. I
Yes.
hit something.
Yes.
That's divine guidance here, helping us with my technical lack of abilities. Anyways, we're all spirits attached to a body having a human experience. And when we're attached to a body, we vibrate more slowly just because the body has mass. And so we can understand, most of us, that in Western cultures, we're taught that the spirit or the soul is someplace in the chest region. I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, and went through 12 years of Catholic schools, and I was taught that it was someplace in the chest. Well, that's not what I perceived. My perception is that the spirit is the main part of us, certainly the everlasting part of us, and the body is inside the spirit. The spirit is the power source for the body, which is why when somebody dies and the body and the spirit separate, the body doesn't work anymore because it doesn't have a power source. The way that I explain this, I talk in analogies a lot because it gives our human minds a frame of reference for all this woo-woo stuff that we're going to be talking about. And my analogy that I like to use for how this is all set up is, imagine going to the pet store and buying a goldfish. They're going to put it in a plastic bag of water in order for you to get it home. Well, the fish represents our body, the water represents our spirit, and the plastic bag represents our energy field membrane, which is the container that holds the energy from our body and our spirit together. Because if you think about it, every type of energy, and everything's made of energy, but every type of energy that's used for a specific purpose, like electricity that comes into our homes or our businesses, it's contained in wires. Natural gas, water, it's contained in pipes. Well, the energy that makes up our body and our spirit is contained in what I call the energy field membrane. And it feels to me like really thin, stretchy saran wrap, the kind that you'd see on a tray of chicken breast from the grocery store. You know, that stuff's thinner and stretchier than the saran wrap that perhaps is in the Glad wrap box in our kitchen drawers. So the energy field membrane is what holds everything together. And when we talk about spirituality, many of us know that there are angels around us. The angels are around your children. They're around all of us as we pass. So are our deceased loved ones and our deceased pets. Their spirits are around us as well. It's fun when I'm seeing deceased pets that are farm animals around somebody as they're dying, and I can relate that to the family. And I say, okay, there's horses and pigs and ducks and chicks and stuff. And I'll describe what they look like. And I'll say, did your grandmother grow up on a farm? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll describe a cow and they'll say, yeah, that was Bessie, her cow, and Susie, her horse, or whatever. And it brings them a lot of comfort. So every animal you've ever had in your whole life, their spirits will be there as you're dying. Time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time is a human creation. And so people go through phases of transition that we're going to talk about in a minute, and they can do it instantly. They can do it over days, weeks, months, even years. I had a woman call into my show for 2 years, and her father was dying for 2 years and was not able to communicate. He was very close to death, and they kept thinking, okay, it's going to be next week. It's going to be tomorrow. It was 2 years. So if we keep in mind as we go through this, that time doesn't exist in the spirit world, it'll help make sense for what we're doing. Angels and spirits have been talked about since the beginning of time in all cultures, the Greeks, the gods, the goddesses, all of that, the angels. Every ancient philosophy refers to angels in some sort. I think it's the Indian culture calls them avatars. The Buddhists call them something else. I can't think of the name right off the top of my head, and angels, but there's a name for angels and deceased loved ones. Every religion talks about them. Every angel is depicted kind of in the same way by different cultures, but we all have a general understanding, and people don't really rebel against the thought of angels. We can pray to saints, right? Saint whoever. My mother and my grandmother used to pray to Saint Anthony when they'd lose something. And they said this prayer, Tony, Tony, look around, something's lost and must be found. And inevitably they'd find whatever it was they were looking for. In Paradisum is an ancient Gregorian chant that said at the end of every Roman Catholic funeral, and in Paradisum means into paradise. And it talks about how our loved ones and the angels will greet us and lead us into paradise. And when I was writing my book, I thought, okay, where did this originate? And I found that it began as a 5th century Gregorian chant. And perhaps it took till the 5th century till someone was well educated enough to be able to read and write. And certainly most of those people were men living in monasteries and synagogues. So I believe people since the beginning of time have been able to see what happens as somebody's dying. And perhaps as we've become more well educated in the last 150 years or so and become more proof-based, we've forgotten that all cultures contain this information. It's in literature, all literature that's out there, especially the old stuff. It's talking about saints and angels and spirits. I think the most common one, most well-known one is good old Ebenezer Scrooge with Christmas past, present, and future in Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I think that's a great example of all of this. Well, in this day and age, it's wonderful that science is catching up with woo-woo. Dr. Gary Schwartz is at the University of Arizona. I'm on one of his advisory boards, and he's proven that life exists after bodily death and spirit lives. He spoke at the conference, so that was fun to listen to what he had to say. One of my other favorites is Dr. Chris Kerr, And he's a hospice director of Hospice of Buffalo, huge hospice organization. They take care of about 1,500 patients a day. And he wrote a book called Death is But a Dream. And I know he's been on some of your meetings as well. Some of you may have heard him talk. And he talks about how his university-based research shows that 90% of people at the end of their life see the spirits of deceased loved ones and deceased pets within either dreams or visions. And it's usually within the last 6 months of their life. And so I tease him, I say his book and his research is the yang to my book's yin, because I talk about the same thing from the spirit side of the equation. And I tease him and I say, I love it that your science is caught up with woo-woo. And he just laughs at me, but it's true. We're saying the same thing, that we're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones. When I first saw this was when my mother was dying in 2002. And as Irene and Elizabeth mentioned, I'm a businesswoman and an inventor who learned how to do woo-woo. And I tell people I'm a buffet of psychicness. So I do medical stuff. We can do past lives. We can talk to deceased loved ones. We can scan and talk to pets. We can do all kinds of things. But with my mother, it's the first time that I saw what I've come to call the 12 phases of transition. And my mother was an educator. She was a principal and a teacher before that. And it was her parting gift, not only to me, but now to the world, because I'm teaching people what happens when somebody dies. And how this all came about was a few years after my mother died, I was with my mentor and she was doing a healing on me. And my deceased loved ones are always with me in the room when my mentor Susan is doing a healing on me. And one day this dead Pope showed up and he had his whole Pope outfit on, the hat and the staff. And I'm sure he had on the red shoes. I couldn't see him from laying down on the table. And I said to him, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, I never heard of a Pope Clement. And he laughed and he said, well, I was number 6. I said, okay, great. How may I help you? And he said, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies. And I started laughing and I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm a businesswoman. People will think I'm nuts. And he said, yeah. Just get on with it, because people are so afraid to die because they've been taught, and it's been so bastardized over the millennia, and people are worried whether they're going to fly or fry, because that's what we've been taught. So he said, so I know, you know what happens. You're supposed to teach the world what happens. Long story short, I get in my car to go home. And I just, for kicks, I looked it up on my phone. I looked up Pope Clement VI. Come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague. And he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And 2/3 of Europe died in the Black Plague. And I thought, okay, I can't make this up. But that's the catalyst to all of this, to my writing my book and everything else that's come from this, is getting this information out there. The spirit exits the body through the top of the head. It looks like a cartoon caption bubble, like a speech bubble, and hangs onto the head as the person is dying. And that's when I scan anybody anywhere in the world. Most of the work I do is remote. If I see the spirit attached to the top of the head like that, I know that somebody has entered the 12 phases of transition. Second phase is that the parents arrive, and it's always the mother that shows up first. And the mother is always at the person's left foot. So in this, we're looking at this. So imagine that if you turn it around, the M is for mother, the F is for father. That's the person's left foot. Even though it's our right, it's their left. Imagine if they're laying down. And the mother spirit is the one that runs the show from the spirit world. That really surprised me. I didn't expect that. I expected it to be some kind of mission control in heaven that was running it, or maybe the guardian angel or somebody else. But it's always the maternal spirit that's closest to the person who's dying. So in your case, since you're still alive and your child was dying, it would be your mother if she's deceased, or if your mother's still alive, it would be her mother. It would be your maternal great grandmother. It's always on the maternal side. And the mother spirit is the one that shows up. When a child is adopted, it's always the mother that raises the child that's running the show from the spirit world. So if the adopted mother's still alive, it will be the adopted mother's mother or grandmother, always on the maternal line. And then the father shows up too, and that's always on the maternal line as well, which I find really interesting, but it correlates with many cultures. The first one that comes to mind is in ancient Kabbalistic healing, which is ancient Jewish mysticism. The female part of the body is always the left side. The male part of the body is always the right side, which correlates with what I see where the spirits are positioned. And furthermore, it talks about how a child is not considered to be Jewish unless born by a Jewish mother. So many of these things that I get to see in the spirit world, I can find their roots in ancient cultures and religions. So again, back to, I think people have been able to see this since the beginning of time. Phase 3, angels arrive. These are big old angels. They look like they're 6 or 7 feet tall. They have white gowns on, big wings, bare feet. Their white gowns are belted at the waist with a rope. Is that what angels really look like? I don't know. That's what they look like to me, because that's what I was taught they look like. You know, the statuary, the paintings, the depictions of angels are what I just described. Certainly somebody that is raised in an indigenous culture in the middle of the Amazon may see angel energy as a blob of purple, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just that that's the angel energy. And spirits are going to come in a way, they're going to show themselves to us in a way that we can relate to who they are. It has to come through in a human frame of reference and our human frame of reference. You know, I was raised in Catholic schools. I was taught that's what angels look like. That's my frame of reference for angels. And the angels show up in phase 3 and they form a circle around the person who's dying, with the parents anchoring the circle. As we get closer to death, those angels start to open up into a horseshoe and they continue to expand, you'll see, till they're in a straight line at the end. Keep in mind, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So this sequence of the 12 phases of transition happens whether somebody dies instantly, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, or whether they die over a prolonged period of time. It's all the same thing. Phase 5, additional angels show up, and they're on either side of the spirit bubble. When that happened with my mom, I thought, this is going to be interesting, because I don't know what they're going to do, but I know that they're going to play a role. And certainly they do. And you'll see how in just a minute. Phase 6 is interesting because deceased loved ones' spirits start to arrive, and they are on the outside of the initial horseshoe of the parents and the angels. And they're from all walks of life. They're from many, many lifetimes, and they're dressed in period attire, which is fun. So I may see somebody from the Renaissance period. I may see somebody from the 1960s dressed like Twiggy, you know, with white go-go boots and mini skirts or whatever. But it's interesting to describe to the family members what these spirits look like. And inevitably they recognize who they are. Oh, that's Grandma Ann, or that's Uncle Charlie, or that's whomever, when that's happening. Phase 7, the animal spirits start to arrive. See the peas over to the right of the screen. I call that the dog pound, and all animals go in the dog pound, and they're always in that position. And as I mentioned, they're always there. The purple S stands for spouse. So if somebody is preceded in death by their spouse, the spouse I always see to the southeast of the maternal spirit. And if you're like Zsa Zsa Gabor and you've had 15 husbands, they all line up out from the closest spouse is going to be near the mother spirit. And then the farthest going out spouses are going to be out to the right as I perceive them. And sometimes there are several spouses there. So that's fun. Phase 8, horseshoe expands, more spirits are continuing to arrive. Phase 9, many, many spirits. At the end, they look like dots on the horizon. There's so many of them, thousands and thousands. And it's like the room opens up and the side walls disappear and the wall going out disappears. So it's just in every direction, there are spirits. And I call them the Welcome to Heaven Committee. You know, they're there to be there as support and to be part of the welcoming ceremony. Phase 10 is interesting because the wings on the angels on either side of the spirit bubble start to move. And it's a very slow rhythmic movement, reminds me of a giant owl. And they create a vortex above the dying person's head. Imagine a funnel cloud. And I can feel it, I can see it, I can hear it. It reminds me of driving through a car wash at the end when you're in the car and they turn the dryers on and it sucks all the water off your car. That's what it feels like. And interestingly enough, I believe this is what NDE, people that have gone through near-death experiences, talk about going through the tunnel. This is what they're doing. The tunnel is their spirits exiting through the top of their head and they're coming into this vortex to help it evacuate. Last week, I had a client and we were talking with her deceased dad. And he was telling us that he loved it when he transitioned because he was able to fly by himself for the first time in his life. And he said, it was amazing. He said, I went through that funnel and then I was able to fly. And I said to my client, well, was your dad a pilot or was he really into airplanes or something? And she said, no, not that I know of. And then she emailed me a couple of days later and she said, I found out my dad applied to be a pilot in the military and was turned down because he was colorblind. So she said, it turns out he was very interested in flying and wanted to be a pilot himself. So
That's wonderful.
that was,
Could I ask you one question before we move on?
yeah.
Tiffany is asking, wondering where our kiddos are when we leave. So I know you have a bunch of FFs, which are family and friends. Do our
Yeah.
kids hold a certain space?
They're in that mix with the family and friends. Although it's interesting because when my mother was dying, my Mima, who was running the show, my grandmother who had died just 6 months prior to my mother, she was holding an infant at one point, like a newborn. And I said to my dad, did you guys lose a baby that I don't know about? I'm one of 4. And he said, yeah, your mom had a miscarriage before my older brother, Jay, was born. That was the baby's spirit that my Mima was holding. So yes, and those babies will show up and our children will show up looking like they looked when they passed, because that gives us the opportunity to recognize them. One other quick fun story about that. At my mother's funeral, my aunt and uncle flew in from Kansas City. And my mother lived in Columbus, Ohio, where I was raised. And my aunt was there and I said, I think I saw Maureen. Maureen was her daughter who drowned in their backyard pool at 1.5 years. And I said, I saw Mima holding her at one point and she had on a pink dress with smocking on it. And my Aunt Irene said, that's the dress we buried her in.
Oh,
so again, they're going to show up in a way that the people who are going to recognize them are going to be able to easily recognize them. Thanks for the question. Sure. Giant owl wings. Imagine if you've ever watched a documentary on giant owls and their wings move silently and rhythmically. And I thought, okay, when I was writing my book, I thought, I'm just going to search giant owl wings vortex and see what comes up. Well, come to find out, science catches up with woo-woo again, because there's this thing called the wingtip vortex. And it's a phenomenon that happens to everything that flies. And if you Google wingtip vortex or do an internet search, you will find thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of articles and pictures and descriptions and engineering drawings and stuff like that about the wingtip vortex. What it does is it causes lift. It's how the air flies over the top of the wings and comes back under, and they meet and it forms this vortex that causes lift. So the movement of the angel's wings cause these vortices to form, which helps the spirit evacuate from the body. I thought that was amazing when I learned about that when I was writing the book. And I found this picture of wingtip vortices, and they, I think, used a little pyrotechnics to help form these angels, but I just thought that they were so terrific. But those vortices were formed by the plane passing over them, and then they probably discharged some pyro to help form those figures. Phase 11, as I mentioned, the angels have formed a straight line. There are thousands and thousands of spirits that are there to welcome the person to heaven, family and friends from all lifetimes. And certainly phase 12 is when the spirit evacuates from the body, detaches, and is escorted to heaven by angels. And I always see the spirit go up and to the right. And I always wondered about that. I thought, what's up with the up and to the right? And there was a physicist in my talk at your conference, at the Helping Parents Heal conference. Irene, were you in there for this discussion? And he said, well, if you think about it, vortices, when you're unscrewing a jar lid, you turn it to the right to screw it in because it goes down or goes up, and then you unscrew it to the left to get it off. So he said, the way that a vortex is going to be spinning, it's always going to be spinning so that the person or whatever's coming out of it's going to go up and to the right. And I thought, okay, mystery solved. I thought that was terrific. Irene, were you in there for that discussion? Yeah, that was fun. All right. Heaven looks like a big plasma wall of yellowish, whitish light to me. And it has like a plasma consistency. When you go through it, it closes right up. You can't tell anybody was there. When you come back out, same thing. I have escorted many spirits to heaven. And so I can go in and out of the plasma wall of heaven. Some people call it the veil, whatever. I have never seen St. Peter in front of the heavenly gates with a clipboard saying, okay, you're allowed in, you're not. I've never seen that, and I don't think it exists. So everybody goes to heaven, like the movie All Dogs Go to Heaven, all people go to heaven too. And then the really fun thing that I heard from a deceased loved one with whom I was talking with my client, and they said the thing, it was like magic because all those spirits of my loved ones were in the room with me as I was dying. And then when I got to heaven, they were there when I went through the wall and got to heaven. So he said it was like a magic trick. Well, spirits can be everywhere all at the same time. And that's what I've heard many, many times from spirit, is that the Welcome to Heaven committee is there waiting for them when they arrive. Okay, let's change directions for a minute. And every one of our deceased loved ones, all your children, as Elizabeth and Irene have told you for years, they're in heaven and they're having a ball. They think of something and they create it. So the guy who wanted to be a pilot, he could be a pilot in heaven. And what I hear from spirit all the time is they just think of something and it immediately materializes. So I think that gives us a lot of joy knowing that they're just having a ball up there. And they're with their loved ones, and they're with, I know they're with all other people that are members, their kids too. I know, Elizabeth, they come and knock on your bedroom door in the morning, don't they? Because they want to wake you up so you can get to work. You can download this chart of the 12 phases of transition on my website, askjulieryan.com. I suggest that you consider doing that, store it in your phone. So when you have somebody who's dying, just ask, what phase is my dad in? What phase is whoever in? And you'll get a number, and then you can refer to the chart. It's also on Instagram. If that's easier for you, just go to my Instagram, Ask Julie Ryan, and you'll see the 12 phases of transition chart is in the link in bio. So you can download it that way and save it on your phone. How do you talk to your deceased loved ones? It's really simple. Everybody can do it. We all come in with the hardware. We all have the ability. So here's a cheat sheet on it. What we do is we raise our vibrational level to the level of spirit, because when we're attached to a body, we vibrate more slowly simply because the body has mass. I equate it to trying to run an electrical current through a bowl of pudding. It's going to slow it down because of the mass of the pudding. So how do you raise your vibrational level? Well, certainly we want to have the communication going. And when we're in grief, it breaks the communication with spirit because it's a low frequency vibration. Grief doesn't feel good. Anything that doesn't feel good is a low frequency. So what we want to do is we want to raise our frequency to the level of spirit. You can meditate. Certainly that's a wonderful way to do it. Or if you don't have time to meditate, here's what I do. You stand in the Superman or Superwoman pose. Legs spread apart, hands on hips, and what you're going to do is you're going to raise your vibrational level, because university-based research, Amy Cuddy is a professor at Harvard. She has shown through her research that when we stand in that pose, it lowers our cortisol levels. So it lowers our stress hormones and it raises our dopamine and serotonin levels. So standing in that pose, even just for 30 seconds or a minute, is going to raise your vibrational level. Now, here's the Julie Ryan hack. Envision a geyser of light coming from the core of the earth and shooting up through your body and out the top of your head. What you're doing is you're accessing the core of the earth energy, the scalar wave frequency, that is the same frequency as spirit. So you can raise your vibrational level in a nanosecond just by standing in the Superman pose or Superwoman pose and envisioning a geyser of light coming from the core of the earth up through you. Our heads are like big satellite dishes. They receive and they transmit frequencies. Every spirit has a frequency they keep throughout all their lifetimes. So to get in touch with them, all you have to do is think of them, whether you knew them or not. It doesn't matter. And it tunes your satellite dish head to their vibration, much like a radio station will do. And you can talk to anybody you want. Your child, your deceased grandmother, Elvis, it doesn't matter. You just think of them and you're going to tune your frequency satellite dish head to their frequency and be able to communicate with them. Now, there are lots and lots of frequencies out there, but we hone in on the one that we want to talk to just by thinking of them. It's as easy as clicking your remote control and tuning to the satellite dish station that's being broadcast on that, or your cable channel or whatever. So that's how you do it. And then you just say something to them, either a statement or a question, and you're thinking of them. You just say something to them and they're going to answer you instantly. How you know it's from them is it's going to come in faster than you can snap your fingers, or before that, because remember, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So they've already got our statement or question and they're already answering us sometimes. And we're getting an answer. If you think about the answer for more than a couple of seconds, that's going to be your brain talking to you. So practice it. Just say something to them. You're going to get an answer within a second. When it comes in, trust it. That's them talking to you. So you can do that and know that your loved ones are having fun. They're with the angels, they're with their deceased loved ones, and they're with each other, and they're able to be around you at any time, at all times. Whenever you think of them, they come in immediately. If you're doing something random and a thought of them comes into your head, let's say you're folding laundry or doing something, working or something, and you weren't even thinking of them, and all of a sudden you think of them, that's them letting you know that they're around you. So that's it, everybody. I'm open for questions. I didn't look at the timing. I was going fast because I didn't know how we were doing on timing. Oh, we're good.
You're doing great. And I want to tell you, first of all, that everything that you say is so reassuring and it's so much fun to listen to you speak. Every time that I hear this, it always makes me feel so good because it aligns completely with the way that we think in helping parents heal as well. I had a question that I thought was kind of interesting, and I haven't heard this before, but I think that maybe it would be something that you would have an idea for. Marnie is saying, is this why we are born with a soft spot on the top of our skull for the soul to enter? Is that something that you have ever heard before? And is it something that you have a thought about? Or
I've never heard it before, but I got a yes from spirit on that. So that's very
Well,
perceptive,
there you
Marnie.
are. That's
Great question.
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, why not? And certainly, when we're in our mother's wombs, we're not needing to have that separate identity, obviously. And then when we're born, we do. So, Darlene is saying that this is fascinating. I'm going to just see if people would like to type some questions in as you are, let's see. One of the moms was asking about reincarnation, about being worried that if someone reincarnates before we transition, their child reincarnates before we're able to transition, will we be able to see them? And so I thought maybe you could answer that for us and just reassure the mom.
Sure. There are some schools of thought, and this makes my head want to explode because I don't quite, I mean, I have trouble wrapping my head around this, but there are some scholars and schools of thought that we live multiple lifetimes concurrently, and that there's always a part of our spirit that's always in non-physical, and that it can be in multiple lifetimes all at the same time. Dr. Gary Schwartz talks about that when light goes out into the universe, that it goes out for forever. So there are multiple lifetimes that are seeing that light, and then he equates that to spirit. That's an advanced concept, but I think it's safe to say that yes, your loved one, your child will be around you. You will be with them in spirit. Absolutely. Absolutely guaranteed, a bazillion% guaranteed.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask Julie, and there's a question in the chat about this. What does spirit show you when we leave our bodies? You know, so many are worried about our children who have been in car accidents or, murders or whatever. Is the spirit out of the body at the time they pass, before they pass? What's shown to you?
The spirit bubble that are in those graphics that I just went through, when somebody's dying, that spirit exits through the top of the head, hangs on in that bubble configuration. I call it the spirit bubble. So yes, spirit tells me that transitioning is effortless. There's no pain there. It's amazing. What spirit shows me is when somebody is transitioning and they're separating from the body, it looks like a hologram of them that is escorted to heaven by the angels. I was going to call my book Angelic Escorts, and my son Jonathan said, Mom, you can't call it that because it sounds like a dating service or a call girl service. So that's why I came up with Angelic Attendants. But actually the angels escort the person's spirit to heaven. So the person appears to me as a hologram of what they looked like when they were alive. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think she's just concerned that, we just want to make sure that they haven't felt the pain of what the body is experiencing.
No, they don't. And I've done this thousands and thousands and thousands of times with spirits, and every one of them says, no, there's no pain. I've heard it described like you're walking from one room into the next, you fall asleep in one reality and then you wake up in another reality. It's just absolutely effortless.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I agree. From everything that I've heard, nobody ever suffers. They are out of their bodies before they ever have a chance to suffer. And unfortunately, the only people that have a hard time with our crossings are the people that are here. And just like we are having a hard time with our kids. But if we know that they are happy, healthy, and whole, it makes everything so much easier. Denise is saying, can our family and friends help with issues here on Earth, especially if it involves children, our children, or their children? So she's talking about the FF that you have in the graph, meaning the ones who have transitioned. Can they help us here? Is that something that is?
Oh, yeah. They're always guiding us and leading us. Absolutely. All the time. You're being led all day long by things. We don't pay attention. We're not cognizant of it because we're busy living our lives, but you're led to what you want to have for breakfast. You're led to let's go this way to work because there's a traffic jam on the freeway. You're led to turn on the GPS to see what's going to be the fastest way. All of that, we're all led all day long. And yes, by our deceased loved ones, by our children, by our spirit guides, by our angels, by God, spirit in general. We're all we're all made in the image and likeness of God. So we're all a speck of the divine, and spirit is all the big general amalgamation of all of our specks of the divine, is how I think of it. If we're a drop of water and we are dropped into the Pacific Ocean, we become the Pacific Ocean. And that's how we are.
Well, and you learned these abilities
I
and
did.
so a little later in life. And this is just to give all of us hope. And you follow your intuition. And I don't know very many people who are as happy and as giving as you are. And so I think that you have taken that on as your life's mission, to listen to your guides and to listen to what they're telling you, obviously with these inventions that you've created as well. But just being able to heal, as well as to see when someone transitions, all of these different stages, it's just so exciting and so helpful to all of us as well.
And I
And
teach people how to do this stuff. Everybody can do this. I mean, I have doctors and other medical providers and judges and lawyers and teachers and plumbers and whatever that go through my class, and everybody can do all of this stuff.
so
We all come in with the ability.
are your classes, do you have any that are starting up anytime soon? Just to
I teach one live quarterly, and I limit it to 12 people. And I'm finishing up with my fall class here on Saturday. The next one's in January. That's full. I do have openings for April of next year in that one, but there's one that's online that people can take right now. And the key is practice groups. Both of my classes have practice groups, and they're multiple times a week, and you can access any one you want. But the key is you can hear about something, you can read about something, but until you do it, it doesn't really sink in. It's kind of like, think about when you were learning to drive a car. Well, you could watch movies and read stuff and ride in the car with your family members, but until you drove that car, you didn't really get what it was all about. And this is the same way. So I think the most important part of learning to do this is to practice it. And that's what my classes provide, is a like-minded environment where you get validation for the information that you're receiving. And then the more you do it, the more you learn to trust it. The more you trust it, the easier it is. And then it's just second nature. But think about, every one of us has had a situation where we think of somebody and they either call us or text us, or we run into them, or they send us an email and we say, "Ah, what a coincidence. I was just thinking of you." Well, no coincidence. That's your intuition. That's your psychic ability that's happening. And we've all experienced that.
Well, that is a beautiful explanation. And so I just think it's fascinating that you have been able to listen to your guides, to your angels, to your loved ones who have passed, and to be able to help so many people the way that you are doing is just it's fabulous. But we have some other questions. Sandra is asking one that she actually just sent to me, but I think that it's a very good question, especially based on what you've been saying. Do souls elevate to the higher realm, and therefore is it more difficult to connect to them as our earth years pass? Could you maybe say something about that?
It's what I've been told by spirit many, 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 many times is there really aren't realms as we understand them. We try and put our human perspective on spirit, on heaven, on all of that to try and be able to understand it. And a lot of it we're not going to understand until we transition and we're back there. But any spirit is available. Again, our heads are satellite dishes. You just think of them, and you immediately are tuned to their frequency. So every spirit's available. They're all available at the same level, at the same ease. Whoever you want to talk to, it doesn't matter. You just think of them. And then you're connected to their frequency. You've tuned to their radio station. You know, you think about radio stations, you may be listening to 102.5 and you're listening to country. And that's the megahertz. That's the frequency on which that music's being broadcast. Well, you want to turn to classic rock, you change to 92.7. You change the frequency, and that's what's being broadcast on that frequency. It's the same with spirit.
We were just talking about this a couple nights ago. It's so interesting, and it's so important to be able to realize that they are speaking to us, and maybe that ringing that you're hearing in your ear constantly, the way I always do during these meetings, isn't tinnitus. It's actually just the kids trying to get through. But we have some other questions. Dr. Shauna Menard is saying, is the timing of passing predetermined, or sometimes yes and sometimes no? Is there anything we could do to have changed the outcome, or was this sort of the plan? I hear from my son, and he tells me that this was always the plan. Minor details could be different, but would always lead to the same outcome. But she wonders if she can trust this.
Great question. It's one that I'm asked a lot, and I've asked spirit this a lot. When we incarnate, we choose where we're born, when we're born, to whom we're born, and the circumstances into which we're born, so that our lives can have a basic trajectory that will allow us to explore and experience certain things that we want to. And when I do past life work with clients, I'll see kind of a general script of something, and a semblance of that script will repeat through multiple lifetimes. Different set of variables, different time, different gender, different location, different language, that kind of thing. Same basic thing. Let's say somebody wants to come in and explore being a teacher. Well, there are a bazillion ways to be a teacher. So we'll explore it from different ways, and our spirit expands each time that we explore it. Spirit tells me that every experience in the human realm is neutral to them. They don't see things as good or bad, right or wrong. Again, that makes my head want to explode, because I think, well, how could somebody losing a child, how horrific and how painful that is, how could that be just a neutral experience? To them, it is. Perhaps the child in a past life was the parent who lost a child, or the sibling, or the whomever, the doctor, whomever. In this round, they wanted to explore and experience what it was like to be the child that died. And so that helps me kind of wrap my head around it a little bit easier. But as far as predetermined dates and times, like you're going to die on Wednesday night, the 12th of December at 1 p.m. Central, I hear that that's not the case. I also hear that we all decide when we go, where we go, how we go, who's with us or not when we go. So it's somebody that's murdered. And again, this is a stretch for most of us when we first hear this to understand it. But let's say somebody's shot and we think, okay, that person murdered the person who died. Well, the person who fired the shot doesn't have the power to decide when that person who dies is going to die. The spirit of the person who dies decides whether they're going to die from that shot or not, and when and how and what the circumstances are going to be. So yes, there's a general plan. Free will comes in and they choose how that is implemented. And in the middle of it, they can change. But there isn't anything that any of us can do to prevent somebody from dying. And the other thing is, talk to any funeral director, talk to any hospice nurse or provider, talk to any ICU, CCU medical provider. They'll all tell you unlimited stories about so-and-so was sitting with their grandma for 3 weeks. The family was. Aunt Susie was on duty. She got up to go get a cup of coffee. She was out of the room for 3 minutes and grandma transitioned while Aunt Susie was out of the room and she was by herself. And the family saying, really, grandma? We wanted to be with you and we worked so hard to be with you and then you left. Well, it's always that spirit's prerogative to decide how and when and with whom or not.
Well, that's a beautiful way of saying it. And it's true that I hear that quite frequently, that a lot of times people transition when they don't have all of their loved ones around them because they know that it might be a little easier to sneak out. But that's for people who are ready to leave, obviously. So different from our kids. But let's see, I had a question here about shared crossings. Cindy's asking, what are your thoughts on shared crossings as she had with her son? I traveled with him and was stopped at the Vale. I was told that it wasn't my time and they let Kevin go through. Once he left, he was like a 3D image to her. Do you have any thoughts about shared death crossings? And maybe, obviously William Peters spoke a little bit more about that.
I'm not that familiar with that term, but I certainly have escorted several spirits to heaven. One was my younger sister who died in 2010. We buried her on her 50th birthday. It was awful. She had a brain aneurysm and was on a ventilator for a few days. And she didn't want to leave. She wanted me to go with her. So I did. I separated my spirit from my body, went with her and the angels, took her through the plasma wall, and all the family and friends were there. And then I came back and reattached my body to my spirit to my body. And I've done that a few times, a handful of times when spirits have asked me to accompany them. There is a part in my book called The Walk to Heaven, which I do a lot with people who, and my graduates of my class are all taught to do this too. And it's just a dress rehearsal for what's going to happen when somebody actually separates from their body, because people are really afraid, a lot of people, because they've been inundated with the whole heaven and hell thing. And so what we'll do is we'll do a dress rehearsal and take them through the plasma wall, the gates of heaven, or the veil, whatever you want to call it. And when they see that all of their deceased loved ones and friends and pets are there, then it really negates the fear. A friend of mine, we both did this with her dad, who was very afraid to die. And he got there and he said, if I would have known that it was going to be like this, I would have come sooner. And then they never want to leave. So we bring them back and reattach their spirit to their body and reattach our spirits, back into our bodies. And inevitably, they usually transition fairly quickly after that because the fear is gone. So the walk to heaven is something that's really, really useful when
Julie,
somebody
you are
is.
just so amazing. Speaking about this, just kind of like it's an everyday occurrence to take someone to heaven, go through the plasma while unattach your spirit, and then come back again.
Well, my friend that we did this with, her dad, she called me and I was cooking dinner. She said, he's afraid to die. And I said, all right, let's take him on the walk to heaven. And so I just turned off the stove and we did it. And it took a few minutes and then he died later that night.
That's
so
absolutely
it
beautiful.
works great.
Well, so uplifting.
It is uplifting. We have one last question that because we're running out of time, but I really would like to just ask you this one last question. about, I guess Christy's asking it, and I think that this is a good way to kind of end the conversation. Do you think children who children transition on purpose before their parents to help heal generational lifetime patterns or open to greater spiritual awakening? Is that something that you have seen or felt?
Well, it goes back to that we come in with a script of something we want to explore and expand our spirit. And so, yes, it's what their experience is. It's that spirit's experience. And I hear so often from my clients when we're talking with their deceased loved ones telepathically, and they'll say, why would you do that to me? Why would you leave me? My goodness, what were you thinking? What was going on? It's all about what that spirit wants to experience and explore. And it's all about what your spirit's experiencing and exploring through going through that circumstance, as horrific as it is. So it's all based on what our spirit wants to explore and experience in each lifetime.
That's beautiful. And I do believe that a lot of us, and we're all in training to become shining light parents. A lot of us have gotten there, and I think that our kids are incredibly proud of us. And it's something that they help us to do this every single day. And I think that once we do have a child transition, the only thing that we want to do is to help others and to make our kids proud. And so being able to have such a very, very difficult thing happen actually brings a lot of collateral beauty. And that sounds very strange, I know, but one of the things that it's brought to my life is meeting you, Julie. I would never have met you. I would have never met Irene either. And I would have never met all of these wonderful parents whose kids are all waiting for us. They're all together tonight watching this, but as soon as we transition, they're going to be there to greet us. And I truly appreciate you being on here this evening. And we always ask everybody to say thank you and good evening. And if you
May I
want,
say one other thing?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. If you want Angelic Attendants or one of my kids' books, and they're darling, they've got great illustrations, go to askjulieryan.com, ask Julie, just say, I heard you on Helping Parents Heal. I'd love a digital or audiobook. We'll send you both free. It's a free download. Please enjoy it. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to do a thing called Ask Julie Ryan Live. And did any of you ever go to a slumber party as a kid and you tried to levitate a friend or tried to communicate with spirit at a slumber party? Pretty much everybody I've talked to, look at Elizabeth, she did it. And Irene too, right? We all did.
Yes.
And so we're going to have us basically a woo-woo party on Tuesday night. And it's going to be from 8 to 10 Eastern. And we're going to talk to spirit. You can ask questions. It's just going to be a blast. We're going to give away prizes, free classes, free sessions. So it's going to be a blast. Again, askjulieryan.com live /live.
That's great because we don't have a meeting next Tuesday evening. We have a meeting Tuesday afternoon. So
well, perfect.
Yes,
So
because
y'all can come
Yay.
to Ask Julie Ryan Live. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So all of you go to see Julie and ask her questions. And I'm going to get an updated bio before I post this one so that we'll have your other books on there. And thank you so much for being here. It's always
thank you, Julie.
My
and,
pleasure.
Thank you, Julie.
Please go ahead and mute and say thank you.
Julie.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks,
Julie.
Hi, everybody.
Julie.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone.
Meeting. Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.